The Russian occupation authorities in Mariupol are massively taking away housing from the local population. Apartments and houses are declared ownerless, after which they are sold to the Russians who have arrived. A native of Mariupol complained that she, her daughter and grandson were not allowed into the apartment where they had lived for decades. The Russians declared her property ownerless and changed the locks. I lived here for 30 years. My husband lived here for 60 years. But in 2022, my husband died. The documents that we had for the apartment burned down. The housing office said that your house burned down. There are no documents. I have been running around for a year trying to find at least something. My daughter and grandson are registered here. The grandson is 5 years old. Now the apartment is ownerless. There are 3 of us registered here. They won't give us the keys, the woman said. Now she is forced to turn to Russian courts to try to get her property back. It should be noted that the Russian Federation resorts to numerous manipulations to take away housing from Mariupol residents. For example, they restore damaged houses, change their address, after which the apartments are not given to local residents but sold to visiting Russians. Media also wrote that in Mariupol, ownerless apartments are being seized from the population. In the captured Mariupol of Donetsk Oblast, Russian occupation administrations are committing outright meanness, taking away housing from the local population. Video materials with testimonies of victims were posted on his Telegram channel by a Ukrainian blogger, a displaced person from Donbass, Denis Kazansky. It is reported that the Russian regime is declaring apartments in Mariupol ownerless, not only for those who left the city and cannot return, but also for those who currently live there. Mariupol residents tell how representatives of the Russian administration go from house to house and hang notices on apartment doors stating that the housing has been declared ownerless. At the same time, the victims claim that they have prepared all the necessary documents and presented them to the relevant authorities. What can we say then about those refugees who went abroad or moved to territory controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces? They simply cannot get home now and defend their rights. This means that the legal owners will soon be thrown out onto the street, and new residents from Buryatia and Perm will move in instead. Such a liberation. Putin helped, comments the author of the TG channel on the situation.
Aerial footage shows debris on the railroad tracks at the plane crash scene in Boca Raton, Florida earlier on Friday. According to Associated Press, 3 people were killed and 1 was injured when a small plane crashed Friday morning in South Florida near a major interstate highway and pushed a car onto railroad tracks, officials said. Boca Raton Fire Rescue Assistant Chief Michael LaSalle said the plane crash that killed all 3 people on board emitted a fireball when it hit the ground, injuring a person in a nearby car. LaSalle said several roads near the Boca Raton airport will remain closed near Interstate 95. Fire officials told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel that the aircraft appeared to have pushed a car onto the railroad tracks, leading to the track's closure. The Federal Aviation Administration identified the plane as a Cessna 310 with 3 people on board. It went down about 10:20 a.m. after departing from Boca Raton Airport bound for Tallahassee, the FAA said in an email. The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board are investigating, with the NTSB leading the probe.
Road and just west of I-95 up here, service from the hit the trees, broke some branches, and then came down and struck the car right in this area here. When it crossed the median, it looks like it lost some fuel in this area because there was an extensive fire along the roadway here. Ended up on the railroad tracks here. Parts and parts. Here was closed that's Glades Road, the flyover right there that goes over towards I-95. I'll back out here, and you can see there's the eye on the right side of your screen there, and it is flowing. Traffic is flowing. 3 people on board. The fire departments and the police department.
Ukrainian forces shattered Russian artillery in record-breaking numbers, crippling Moscow's plans for a massive offensive in the Borova-Lyman sector. Now, as General Drapati and the elite 3rd Assault Corps assemble a ferocious defensive line, incredible losses will become an inevitable reality for the Russian offensive plan to advance to the Oskil and eliminate the major Ukrainian bridgehead there. To achieve this, they are mobilizing a massive number of troops and equipment in this sector, aiming to establish a significant numerical superiority over the Ukrainian defenders. However, Russian offensive planning relies heavily on massive artillery barrages to pave the way for mechanized and infantry assaults. To take advantage of this, Ukrainians have prioritized destroying Russian artillery, aiming to disrupt Russian preparations by preventing them from conducting large preparatory barrages. To reduce the risk of Ukrainian counter-battery fire and destruction by FPV drones and heavy-lift octocopters, Russian artillery is positioned 12 to 15 kilometers behind the front lines. However, concealment remains difficult even in these rear areas, as the mostly towed artillery guns are constrained to emplacements with heavy concealment, such as the forest strips along the Krasna River, according to Euromaidan Press. Ukrainian drone operators use these constraining factors to make well-educated estimates of Russian firing positions, intensify drone reconnaissance in these directions, and confirm and destroy targets. Euromaidan Press says that Russians often follow their artillery doctrine, which says to relocate only after coming under fire, an inflexible approach that only compounds their losses, as accurate Ukrainian drone strikes often only need one hit to disable or destroy the enemy gun. As a result, Ukraine destroyed 1,644 Russian artillery pieces and mortars in March alone, over 3 times the monthly average of the previous 2 years. By purely targeting Russian artillery, Ukrainians are forcing the Russians to increasingly relocate and conceal their heavy guns, which significantly weakens the effectiveness of Russian fire support in and of itself. The sharp rise in Ukrainian combat effectiveness along the Eastern Front is closely tied to General Mikhailo Drapati's appointment as commander of the Khortytsia Operational Strategic Group, which encompasses all of Kharkiv, Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts, according to Euromaidan Press. Since Drapati took command, Ukrainian forces have improved both their defensive coordination and battlefield resilience, resulting in a significant increase in Russian losses and operational costs. Already in the first month of Drapati's appointment, Russians required 17 assaults to take 1 square kilometer, more than double of what it was before. By March, it soared to 36 attacks per square kilometer, highlighting that any surge in Russian offensive action this summer will likely result in an even higher attrition rate for Russian forces. Overall, Russian forces in the Borova-Lyman sector are preparing for a major offensive by massing artillery and experienced troops. However, they are suffering heavy losses from Ukrainian counter-battery fire already before they can launch their assaults. Given the persistent attrition of Russian artillery and the surge of new recruits into the 3rd Assault Corps, Russians are likely to encounter great difficulties in breaching Ukrainian defenses once they decide to launch their summer offensive.